Hi everyone, today I'm here with Gigi Speer. She played softball at Fordham University. She's currently a sports broadcaster, but she also is the head of content at the Next Women's Basketball Newsroom. She's the head of women's sports at Pro Athletes Direct, and she's also the host of Lockdown Women's Basketball. So I'm super excited to have her on here today. Hi, Gigi.
Hello, Jane. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me and thank you for reaching out too.
Yeah, of course. So I just wanted to start off by asking you if you could talk a little bit about your college athletic experience and sort of how that influenced your career path.
Yeah, okay. So I would say my career path probably started in high school. I went to a very high academic high school, so there wasn't a huge focus on sports, but I knew for me going in there was a huge focus on sports. And I wanted to go there and win championships at my high school. And we did. We won one for softball, and I also played volleyball and basketball. And I just remember, and maybe this is because I'm the youngest of a whole bunch of kids, including four boys who all played sports. I remember ever since high school and maybe even before being like, wait, my team is so good, or like this team we're playing against is so good. This pitcher is so good. And I felt like people weren't really talking about it. And then there was a streak with high school volleyball where we were winning really, really hard games. And I'm like, oh, this is so fun. And people started to come out and watch. And I just remember kind of being a self advocate, not just honestly, not just for my teams, though I was always so proud to be on them. I remember being an advocate for the women's sports teams and thinking if we can get that many people to go to a football game and see them lose by however much they lose by consistently, we should get people to come out and watch all women's sports, not just mine. So I remember I wrote an article in high school about it. And then coming into college, I knew I wanted to do media and I wanted to be some kind of on-air personality. So I was in between a couple different schools in the recruiting process, which is terrible, by the way. Anybody who's going through it, I wish you the best of luck. It all works out. It seriously does. But I just remember I could have been like a big fish in a small pond in terms of softball because I had that in high school, but I didn't have like a huge athletic experience in high school. So I thought maybe I want to have that in college, but then I knew I didn't want to be in the middle of nowhere. So I decided on Fordham University as an invited walk-on, and it was a brutal 2-week tryout period. I don't know why coach made it 2 weeks. I still laugh about it with her to this day. But yeah, going through that tryout, I was just so struck by how fun this team was. And then thank God I didn't know before the tryouts just how good they all were. Like I remember at one point in my tryout process, you got 8 balls. I played softball, so you got 8 balls thrown to you. And I was so happy to hit one or two to the outfield. And a girl in my group had hit 5 home runs in a row. And then she walked back, and I'm just about to go up. This is my first at bat on the field. And she's like, oh, I feel so bad today. And I was like shaking in my boots. I'm like, wait, what? But that was just the standard that Fordham softball had was it was a culture of champions. And then even if the results might have looked good on paper, like her home runs in that little workout, everybody always tried to work harder and support each other and really just hold each other to a high standard. So I remember being part of that and I loved it. And then at the same time, I was starting with WFUV radio at Fordham, which is a historic program that I'm happy to be part of that. But there was so much that needed to be changed in the radio station. And I think the fuel I got from my teammates on softball and the other teams like women's basketball, I was like, wait, we need to start telling more women's sports stories. And it's not just Fordham athletics. Like, let's talk about the Liberty. I would do a call-in show where we talk about the Jets and Giants consistently, but at that time, the culture was very male heavy in sports at the radio station. So it was slowly chipping away at that dominant culture. And now they just had their first ever. Her name is Julia Moss. She's the student director of the program, the first ever woman. So I think just like the women's sports landscape's changing, the landscape at Fordham definitely changed throughout that time. But yeah, there were so many different things, but I no regrets playing a college sport. I think it was one of the best things I've ever done.
Yeah, I grew up playing softball, like I played tournament softball like all the way through my senior year of high school. And
Stop, so toxic.
For most of my high school career, I wanted to try to play Division 3 so I could play both, and I ultimately decided, like, in the end not to. But I was very familiar with Fordham softball, and
Mm,
they were very, very good, even, when I was growing up in high school and middle school and stuff. Um,
yeah, they were, and they still have that like winning feeling whenever you go to that field. But I think it's helpful to be a little bit delusional, to be honest. And I wasn't aware of just how good they were.
yeah,
Um, like there was an All-American pitcher before I got there. There's my sophomore year or my freshman year is when we won our seventh title in a row. I had no idea. I had no clue. I knew they were good, but I didn't know they were that good. So it was just like it was great to be like pleasantly surprised, even though it was hard.
yeah, for sure. Can you talk a little bit more about like the opportunities that you had to like, gain experience in like broadcasting and media like while you were playing softball? Because I know the demands and like the time management is obviously very difficult, but it seemed like Fordham
Mhm.
had a lot of opportunities for you to do that.
For sure. And both sides want you to pick one, but both help the other. I would say. I think it was a very unique perspective to be a student athlete at the radio station. There was one other, and she also played softball. And she was a senior when I was a freshman, Maria Tribal Piece. And she's just one of my role models, one of my icons. So I kept on being like, she's going to Long Island to go cover the Islanders right after practice. Like I could go watch this tennis match and like write a little article about it or whatever it was. And then I think coaches, it depends on what coach you have, but for us, Fordham is in the middle of New York City. It's something that they preach, and coaches do the same to recruits. So it was actually pretty good for our recruits to know that there were different opportunities. The balance of it all is like I look back on it and I'm like, how, why would I do all that? But you know how it is. Like you just get used to a certain level of activity, and then kind of sometimes you need the other to keep yourself sane. Like maybe, I'm in a slump hitting, so I'm gonna go call the volleyball game at Fordham, and I'm gonna feel like I did really well, ideally, or like maybe I didn't have the best hit on camera. All right, whatever. I could literally go have a hit at the softball field. So I think it's looking back on it, I learned a lot, but beyond like the typical things like hard work, time management, stuff like that, it was like being a good teammate no matter what. Because there were so many times people would show up for me. They didn't even know I needed it, but like maybe it was a night before I hadn't gotten that much sleep because I had a Liberty game, no complaints. Like I'm going to show up and be ready to go with my team the next day. And we all just helped each other so much. And maybe it's like as simple as joking around during like a really tough run or something like that. But yeah, I don't think I could have gotten through it without my team on both sides too. Like not like I came in, all the radio station people were great to be part of any broadcast with them. And then at Fordham specifically, they have student run newspaper, student run radio station, and then the broadcast there is help from this one man who sets up like the wire, Joe DeBerry, and like has like all the broadcasts technically set up. But at the same time, it's student run in the way that you're picked by students to go do the broadcast. So Fordham's kind of like a self-sustaining whatever you would call it vehicle in that way. And so also self-advocacy became a part of it where I knew I wanted to do volleyball. I played volleyball in high school. Let me make sure that I'm the color analyst for volleyball when we have that. And yeah, so Fordham was great for that. And then plus being in the middle of New York City, like there's no excuse to not cover stuff. There's stuff happening all the time. So it was super helpful. And I definitely recommend even athletes, if there's multiple things that they want to do and they're watching this in their recruiting process, like make sure you do go to a school that's going to set you up for later on too, because afterwards as well, Fordham has been so helpful from every aspect. My former coach, and then also the former director of the radio station, everybody has been helpful. So I think Fordham's a great thing. I always push it because I was pleasantly surprised. I had no idea.
Yeah, I feel like towards the beginning of my athletic career, I was so just overly encompassed with the idea of like being a basketball player and being an athlete. And I just went to class, went to practice, did whatever. But, that sort of like eats at you, like it eats you alive because like you don't have anything outside of your sport to, rely on outside of like, I guess, your teammates. But uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, once I transferred and I kind of started to get a better idea of like what I wanted to do post grad, I got an internship in the athletic communications department. So I was, after practices, I was going to the games and helping with the write ups and the social media and stuff like that. And so that I feel like really completed my college experience and really helped me, like you said, like if I didn't have a great day of practice, like that's okay. Like I'm gonna go to the men's soccer game and I'm gonna help with live tweeting and helping with the scores and stuff like that. And so that definitely helped me and also set me up professionally because I feel like my coach is never gonna tell me like, I want you to go out and find an on-campus internship so that you're juggling a million things at one time and like you're running from practice to this game, but, like, she's also not gonna say no, like, it's on me, like,
Mhm.
that's something that I wanna do to find those opportunities, so, yeah, like, I always recommend to, like, people younger than me who, like, don't know what they wanna do or they might not have time to get, like, traditional experience to get that on-campus experience, like, especially within the athletic department like you did, like, it's awesome, and, like, they're obviously super
100%.
um
Yes, and they always, I think, want to hear your perspective too as an athlete. And, sometimes there's things that you notice that they might not pick up on. And then also I think you learn endless things from the other athletes. But yeah, that's the thing too. Like you could try ticketing, you could try marketing, you could try whatever broadcast opportunities there are. I literally did facilities maintenance. Like I was weeding fields and like sweeping courts, and it was still such a helpful thing along my career journey. That was to make some money. I didn't really want to do that, but also like it only helped. And I think as many experiences as you could get them while you're in college. Like I know it's a lot, and I'm not saying people have to add on stuff, but like you said, there's so many opportunities. So soak it up because they're also great people to know. And then it's nice to like have different people around the campus besides your team.
Yeah, and just, like, to immerse yourself, like, in your campus. Like, I went to a relatively small school, for the last 3 years of my career, but, you get to meet, like most of the people that worked in the athletic department as interns were student athletes on other sports teams, so I was able to meet a lot of people through that. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like if I didn't sort of do other things and pursue other opportunities outside of basketball, that would have really, taken a mental toll on me because, there's not at a small school, like, there's not a ton to do, like, you're just going to class, you're going to practice, and then that's sort of it, so, to
Yeah.
have something else to sort of, like, yeah, I'm a basketball player, but I also work with the marketing department, like, that's another part of your identity that, I feel like is super helpful, as you're, like, in the weeds of your, season and, like, practices are hard and stuff like that.
It's so helpful. You're so right. I think that's great advice.
How did you go about, I know you said you always wanted to be, like, in media and, like, in broadcasting from high school, but how did you go about maybe, like, approaching your coach, or did you not approach your coach? Like, how did you go about, like, starting that process, like, once you got to Fordham and, like, sort of immersing yourself in those experiences?
It's a delusion kicked in again. I was like, I'm gonna go right to this radio station. Like, I was one of those people that went to the student fair. Like, I don't think a lot of people go to that, but I'm like, let me see like what I could tack on because um one of my friends, Ice Young, she said this quote one time, and it stuck with me ever since. You can't complain that there's a lot on your plate when the goal is to eat. Like for me, I felt very privileged to be in college, and um I'm taking out loans, like it wasn't a full scholarship or anything like that, so I really wanted to soak up as much as possible. So I knew, one, I'm going to play softball, I'm going to go to a school that's in a great media center, and it doesn't get better than New York in my opinion. And then I'm going to have to make some money, so I always had a job, and then eventually I was able to merge that job with like somewhat of my passion. So going from like driving a campus van to like finally working in athletics was such a great jump. But I think for me it was always like I'd rather beg for forgiveness in a way with that stuff, because I think a lot of times you have to show people, including yourself, that you can do things and handle it. So I think once my coach knew this girl's going to be at practice, there was one time I slept in, and that was like just brutal. That was senior year, and I was like so gassed from work and everything. Um, but still, softball always was a priority to me. So it's like when I showed up, I'm gonna show up and be a great teammate. I'm gonna lift my other people up and like make sure I'm always adding to the energy. But yeah, I think that would be my advice is prove to yourself and to other people that you could do it, and then find a way to sustain it in a very healthy way. And then maybe that means you narrow things down and drop a couple things or whatever later on. But yeah, I seriously, I think we could surprise ourselves with how much we could do too.
Yeah, I sort of have a very similar mindset to you as like I take on like probably way more than I can handle. And then after a little bit, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can like not do this and not do that. But I'll definitely take on a lot more than probably necessary at first, but which was probably not always like what my coaches wanted to hear. I'm sure you have the same experience, but um yeah, like this was very, very unheard of, but like my senior summer, like for basketball, we're always up there and we're training starting in
Hmm.
July. And I had an internship working for the PGA section in Buffalo. So like in the mornings I was waking up
Wow.
and going to help set up like the tournaments like at the golf course and then going back to school and then working out and then going back to the golf course to like help do the score and like do all this other stuff and then heading back for pickup. And it's like obviously my coach wasn't super happy with that, but like every time I showed up to practice, like you said, like I was there for basketball. Like obviously
Hmm.
my priority is basketball and that's what I'm going to college for. But at the same time, like in my mind, like a year from that point, like I wouldn't be playing basketball anymore. And like this was my last
Right.
summer to sort of gain some experience and, get some like work experience outside of basketball. And so that was important to me. And like, even though my coach probably wasn't super happy with it, like I think I proved to them that like I was able to like balance all these things and like I was able to have all that on my plate. So, yeah, like I completely agree with you. Like if you can handle that and if that is something that you want to do, like I totally like I could not recommend it more because I feel like I would not have had the same college experience without all these things outside of basketball for sure.
Yeah, I think that's amazing you did that. And even just as it translates to sport too, you're pushing limits for yourself, and that's infectious. I'm sure there are other people who have seen you do that and have thought maybe I could try this because she was able to do that and show up to practice every single day. And I think one of the biggest lessons, I was reflecting on this before this call because I want to be like efficient with like the lessons I've learned. One of the biggest lessons from softball and winning a couple championships at Fordham is like if the best thing you could do for your team is to show up as a winner, and like you want to be a good teammate, you want to do the non-negotiables, you want to like play your sport well, but if you could show up like a winner as consistently as possible, man, that's infectious. And that's why you see teams, they have to go through adversity, people have to go through adversity to get to that point, and you're setting a new standard for yourself and for your team too. So that's the way I would pitch it to a coach. If they're ever a little concerned about it, like let
Yeah.
me let me at least see if I could try it, and then at least I'm pushing myself. Coaches always want you to push yourselves in a
Yeah,
good way.
for sure. How did you go about like once you graduated, like tapping into your network and trying to and like, getting the opportunities that you have today? Like how has networking and, mentorship helped you?
Yeah, I was so stressed. I was so stressed my senior year, like racked up all these loans, and I knew it was worth it, and I made great memories, and I really made the most of my time. I had big dreams, and I'm like, where do I start? Why is this not clicking yet? Why don't I have a secure job yet? And this is like maybe March, and then you still have like a championship to play for softball in April, and like there's so much going on, and like life changes happening. So yeah, big sympathy to anybody going through that. I would say no, it's always going to work out, and try some things new. Like I actually wasn't sure Fordham softball was going to work out for me, and it surprised me like nothing else in my life has. And so approaching the job market, it was a very similar approach. Like you send coaches emails in high school, like I'm sending out emails, networking blasts, and Fordham Softball has a great alumni network. WFUV Radio has a great alumni network, and so does Fordham in general. So I would tap into every single thing you could think of and find a way to make the most out of it. Like my first job was at CNBC doing business news and like marketing for like Shark Tank, for example, and like random like shows that CNBC had in the primetime slot. So that wasn't sports, but it helped me learn about SEO, which only helps me in social media right now. It helped me learn so many different tools. But how I got there was I'm looking for job openings And then I'm introducing myself to different people. And one of the Fordham softball alumni has a husband who is a Fordham radio alumni. So I'm like a two for alumni with them. And I remember I had seen that he had posted on LinkedIn. I'm scouring LinkedIn that they were hiring for a new role in his department at CNBC. And I go, let's go. Let me DM him right now on LinkedIn. I do. We set up an interview, set up a call and everything like that. And I was very open to anything coming from that. I really wanted a job. And so yeah, that was the main thing. And then once I was there too, like I knew it wasn't my end all be all, even though I loved it and I loved the people there. So I was still networking and I knew I wanted to get back on camera. I want to get these reps in. So after a couple months there, I'm still looking out, and I really want to end up at Athletes Unlimited. And that's exactly what happened, because same thing on LinkedIn. I saw them post about a job, but I DM'd the hiring manager directly. So as long as you can find the hiring manager, you can put yourself a step up. And then from there, I think the biggest advice is like clean up the LinkedIn. Like I told you, I need to update mine. So I'll be doing that today, hold myself accountable. Post as much as you can. It's not bragging. It's only helping you if you're posting about the work that you're doing. And then also don't be afraid to reach out to people and to follow up. Like there's so many mentors that I've picked up along the way, because I reach out once and then I'm persistent and I'm like, a couple months later, they haven't responded. Hey, again, blah, blah, blah. I saw you, blah, blah, blah. Like I'm persistent in that. So I still use it. Thank God I'm not really hunting for anything right now, but yeah, I try many different things and mold it into what you can make out of it, and know it will work out. It will work out. Just trust.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that, like, you touched on a lot and that I think we both talked about was that, like, if you have a career path that you're passionate about, or if you have something like that you want to accomplish, like once your college career is over, like being a college athlete is not really like an excuse anymore. Like even at like the highest levels,
Mhm.
like most people who like have an idea of what they want to do, like if you want something, like you find a way to like gain experience, like even if it's within your own athletic department. And so I feel like that's a huge misconception that like you can sort of just like have a blank resume and say like, oh, well, I played Division One X, Y, Z, and then just like get a job. Like that's sort of not really how it works anymore.
Right.
And
Nobody
I don't
wants to
think it,
teach you.
yeah.
Like
And
people
I
are
don't really
already
think that
doing
is
their
how it works.
job. Yeah.
It's like
That's what
not,
I've learned is like, yeah, it's just different. Like you want to learn as much as possible so that when you get to that position, you're ready to hit the ground running. And like, yeah, ask questions, like make sure you're doing it right, but be independent. And like sports taught us that too, especially as women. I think I think that plays a part. I think female athletes are super hungry and used to like creating opportunities for themselves in a different way than men's like huge ticketed men's sports athletes are. I think that we really grind, even though women's basketball is a ticketed sport and a revenue generating at a lot of schools. A lot of time the women's basketball teams advocating for themselves, handing out flyers, hey, come to our game, blah, blah, blah. Like things like that. That I think is very unique to the female athlete experience too.
yeah, for sure. And like when you're interviewing, like obviously like it's crucial to like touch on, your college athletic experience because that's what helped has made you who you are and like who you're going to be in the workforce. But, it's like you need something else. Like you need, if you don't have the experience, maybe you leverage like find a way to frame like what courses you took into like how that could, carry over into your career if you do play at a high major school and you don't have the quote unquote experience. But, I've like talked to a lot of different people who've played sports at a lot of different levels. And I feel like the main takeaway is like, if you want something, like you said, it's sort of on you, not on your coaches, not on your professors, not on really anyone else to sort of make that happen for yourself. So yeah, it's definitely, you need to leverage being a college athlete in the career search process, but it's not any excuse in like any book to not have experience once you're
You're
graduating.
spitting game for someone who's still in college too. That's impressive.
Thank you. My last question for you is I know like we talked about it a lot, but just sort of any last pieces of advice for anyone who might be going into their last year of playing or just graduated and might not have had the experience that we just talked about and sort of feel a little lost in the job search process.
Oh, yeah, no, I feel for the people who even you get to that point senior year and you're not even sure what exactly you want to do. It's a long life. I think the best piece of advice is and I heard this all the time and like it really didn't it hit, but like it didn't hit because I was like, wait, but what about like how am I gonna make money? Like enjoy the time. Like there were so many times my final year because I decided to only play four and not do my fifth year because I knew I was going to law school and God forbid I go to law school and play softball at the same time. I think I would try it because like I hate when people say you can't do something, but I'm happy I didn't do that. So there were so many times I'd mark it like, oh my God, that was our last winter run test. This is our first practice. This is my last first practice. Like things like that. Seriously enjoy as many of those moments as possible is what I would say, because you can't recreate it. And no matter how many times I get together with my girls from college and like we do our little trip and like play our little games or whatever, it's not the same. And I live in the same city as most of them, and it's I hardly see them too. So seriously enjoy it. And if you're at a school where you might not have those friends or like you might not enjoy the experiences, enjoy it for you, enjoy it for that younger you that ever started the sport because it's so different. Practical advice is be open to a whole bunch of opportunities. Post on your LinkedIn as much as possible. Don't post like, oh, we won a game. Like post like if you're trying like something in I always wanted money, like I've been saying this whole call, but like I would do stuff for free or like say, hey, can I volunteer to do this just so I can learn more about it? But yeah, I would post on LinkedIn, use that to your advantage, and then just be open. That'd be my final thing. So like enjoy it, kind of advocate for yourself before graduation date, and then be open to any opportunity that is to come. Like even for me, I studied Italian all throughout college, so I kind of wanted to have like one last hurrah. So I applied for this Italian scholarship. So my first job out of college was working at an Italian summer camp. So random and like nothing career wise came from it, but like some life experience did. So being open in that way and not being like, oh, I'm going to start this job and I'm going to have this salary. Like I never had that moment, but I was open to it because I know like your path is unique. So you never know what could happen. And I think it's amazing you're doing this and you're getting different perspectives. And I know for you, like you're hungry and it will only work out. And so I think anybody who's watching this has that same level of hunger. So it literally all works out, guys. It's